How to write FRQs is going to become second nature as the class progresses. This is a routine and a structure that we are going to practice over the summer, return to in the fall, and then practice all the way up to the AP exam. FRQs comprise 33% of the AP exam and appear at the very end of every unit exam, making it an important skill for us to practice now and then eventually master when we come back in the fall. Just so that you have an understanding of what an FRQ looks like, a free response question, I provided you here with an example of the 2016 free response question. Typically, free response questions follow a format similar to this one. This is actually quite a typical FRQ. What it does is it provides you with a scenario. In this case, it involves Danny studying for his geography course, and specifically an oral exam on capital cities. Then the College Board selects random vocabulary words and asks you to identify in what way these terms are either going to help or hinder Danny's success. In order to answer these FRQs, we are going to follow a very specific 3-step process that we're going to practice now, and then ultimately is going to be translated on every exam, on every practice FRQ, and eventually on the AP exam. Because once you master this routine, you simply rinse and repeat. Typically, the 3 bullets that I have in front of you is satisfactory to answer an FRQ, which ultimately means most FRQs are actually only 3 sentences long, at least per individual bullet. The very first sentence when answering FRQ is what we call define, and it's precisely what it sounds like. I would like you to use either your long-term memory, if it's the AP exam or a unit exam, or our class materials, which means concept maps and Prezi, not Google, to define the term to the best of your ability. During the summer, that means just copying directly from Prezi or concept maps. On the exam, even if you're unsure of the definition, please try your best to define it. You never know how much of a benefit that definition might ultimately have when the grader goes and scores that exam question. Trust me, the definition almost never hurts. Beyond that, the second sentence is what we call the apply sentence. And in order to do the apply sentence, I'd like for you to either use directly one of these sentence frames, which perhaps at the beginning of the year might be how you approach these, or create a sentence that begins somewhat similar to one of these 4 here in front of you. These sentence frames are, in this case, this term will help hinder because, this term will help because, this made it possible for. The purpose of the second sentence is to direct the reader's attention to your understanding of how the term is going to affect the scenario. So, for example, studying itself is not a vocab word. But if I asked you how studying is going to help you on that geography test, you would define studying as, the process of reviewing material in order to improve your memory. Apply would involve a sentence that begins with something like in this case, and you would say, in this case, studying will ensure that Danny has appropriately reviewed the material satisfactory enough for him to remember that information on the exam, which will then ultimately increase his overall score. Notice how I started that second sentence with in this case, and what I did is I explained how the term, in this case studying, was going to affect the scenario. And not just it's going to help him, it's specifically going to help him get a better grade. It's going to help him improve his score. I'll show you an example in just a moment of an actual FRQ, and hopefully the second sentence, the apply sentence, will make more sense. The last sentence, and this one is equally as important as the previous, is the for example sentence. The for example sentence is designed to give you the opportunity to extend the scenario beyond what is written. Now, you can't go totally out of left field. You can't grab something that's completely unrelated. But what I'm asking you to do is start your third sentence with for example. And I really would like you to start that third sentence with for example until you really master this. Quite frankly, most students just do that all year. But in the for example sentence, you are going to take the vocab word in question and clearly illustrate a practical, tangible example of how it would be done. So if we go back to the word studying, you might say, for example, Danny might spend 30 minutes the night before the exam reviewing the capital cities that he finds most confusing. That is a very clear example of studying. It's not written anywhere in the scenario that he was allotting time. It's not written anywhere in the scenario that he was dividing up his time like that. However, you were able to take the overall context of studying for a geography exam and added a very clear example, 30 minutes before the exam. I'll give you a practical example in the context of an actual FRQ here, and hopefully that will let us better understand the process. So same question, we're going to be in a geography course. Danny's going to take an oral quiz, and we're looking for capital cities. And the term that I'm going to actually pick is the term called mnemonic device. And we're going to practice an FRQ designed to explain how mnemonic devices are going to help Danny succeed with this task. So we have to take these things into consideration. Geography quiz, capital cities, and we're looking for help. The term mnemonic device, you've actually probably used them all the time without realizing that they're called mnemonic devices. But any type of memory trick, like an acronym or a saying or a song that you've used, something like PEMDAS, for example, in math, are all examples of mnemonic devices. They're designed to assist your ability to remember information by associating the information you're trying to memorize with whether it's a picture or a song, or whether it's just looking at the way a word is spelt. All right, so let's practice actually writing a true AP Psychology FRQ. We first start with the definition. A mnemonic device, as we just identified a moment ago, is a memory trick designed to assist in memory retrieval. You would copy that down, and that would be the very first sentence of your FRQ. That is designed to ensure that you score every FRQ bullet that you rightfully deserve. FRQs are scored either 0 or 1. There is no half credit. And sometimes if your second and third, or in some cases your fourth sentence, isn't clear enough, a definition ensures to the reader that you actually know what the term means. It can sometimes take a borderline on the fence FRQ and shift it over to the positive. The second sentence, the apply sentence, I think is best when it starts with "in this case." That is by far the most common sentence frame or sentence starter for the second sentence. The purpose of the apply statement is to inform the reader that you understand how the vocabulary term is going to affect the overall scenario. So if you take a look at what I wrote, in this case, a mnemonic device will help Danny more easily remember the capital cities and ultimately score higher on the geography quiz. Remember, the bullet asked how a mnemonic device is going to help Danny's success. I have clearly connected the definition, will help Danny more easily remember the capital cities, and specifically related it back to the scenario by identifying how he'll score a higher grade on the overall quiz. The final portion is the example portion. The purpose of the example portion is for you to add to the scenario. Add a few circumstances that are not explicitly written in the scenario, but are still directly related. So if we go on to the example, we have this one. For example, Danny could create an acronym for confusing European capitals. Again, the prompt doesn't directly mention Europe, it just sort of mentions the world in general. However, by doing this, I've created a very specific example. Danny could create an acronym. Nowhere in the prompt does it talk about acronyms. You had to reuse your own long-term memory and understanding of the term. And now when the reader looks at these three sentences together, there's no question that you know what you're talking about. You've defined it. A mnemonic device is a memory trick designed to assist in memory retrieval. You've stated to the reader directly that this is going to help him and specifically help him remember. A mnemonic device will help Danny more easily remember the capital cities and ultimately score higher on the geography quiz. And just to really solidify your example, you've provided a specific, clear example. Danny could create an acronym for confusing European countries. There are also some other examples that I think are satisfactory. Danny could isolate the word cow in Moscow and associate a lot of cows with a vast amount of Russian land. I actually had a student who did that a few years ago on the 2016 FRQ. Isolating the word cow in a term like Moscow is another example of a mnemonic. It's any type of memory trick that's going to assist you in memorizing information. Danny could use what's called the method of Loki by associating locations in the class with each capital city. The method of Loki is a specific type of mnemonic, which we'll talk about when we return in the fall. You don't need all three of these sentences. Really, any of these three sentences would have been satisfactory. Define, apply, which is in this case, and then any of these third sentences, and you would have had a perfect FRQ. And just to stress that, to the left is all three of those sentences added on top of each other. A mnemonic device is a memory trick designed to assist in memory retrieval. That was our definition. We have the "in this case," and then we have the first, for example, that I provided. That is a perfect FRQ. To the right is a very weak FRQ. It is actually so weak that it would get a 0 on the AP exam and would typically get a 0 on our class tests. you take a look at it, it has the same definition. However, the second sentence only says, in this case, a mnemonic device will help Danny. That's really broad. That's not specific. Notice how in the first one, I clearly identified it's going to help him score a better grade. It's going to help his memory. I was very definitive in my statement. This is too open-ended and broad. This could have actually still scored with a better example, but the example really isn't an example. For example, Danny can use memory tricks during the quiz. Well, what exactly does that mean? It's not clear, at least to me, that the reader or that the writer of this FRQ really knows what a memory trick is. Since this student identified acronyms, it's really clear. There's no debate. This student knows exactly what a mnemonic is. This one, it's too weak. Just will help without any additional circumstances, that's not going to score. The third sentence doesn't actually continue the scenario either. It's just really another way of saying the definition. So you need to make sure your second sentence clearly identifies the outcome. And it's really important also in the third sentence to make a very tangible, concrete example. In order to actually score that year, I have the FRQ rubric here at the bottom. This is the precise way in which this FRQ was scored. And notice how they were really looking for an application. They wanted you to say something like an acronym. They wanted you to identify a specific type of mnemonic device, like method of Loki. You can't just say a mnemonic device is a memory trick. A mnemonic device will help Danny. Danny could use a memory trick. It's really not clear at any point in that statement that you have an understanding of what an FRQ, of what a mnemonic device is.